Let me pause you right now for just a moment. This is news that we're receiving right now in our newsroom. Police have arrested the Agriculture Principal Secretary Richard Lesiyampe, and the arrest of Richard follows an order by the Director of the Public Prosecution, Nordin Haji, over irregular purchase of maize by the National Cereals and Produce Board. I repeat that again, this is news that we're just receiving right now. Investigations or police have arrested Agriculture Principal Secretary Richard Lesiyampe. The arrest of Richard follows an order by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, over the irregular purchase of maize by the National Cereals and Produce Board. That is the news that we're receiving right now. Of course, we're going to keep our eyes on that specific story, even as we get further details in regards to that. All right. Again, if you're just joining us, police have arrested the Agriculture Principal Secretary Richard Lesiyampe. The arrest of Lesiyampe follows an order by the Director of the Public Prosecution, Nordin Haji, over the irregular purchase of maize by the National Cereals and Produce Board. I'm also looking at the official Twitter handle where the communication has also come through, and the DPP statement on the investigations into the allegations of the irregular purchase of maize by officials of the National Cereals and Produce Board. And hopefully we'll get to read a bit of this in just a few minutes. But just to repeat that news again, police have this morning arrested the Agriculture Principal Secretary Richard Lesiyampe. The arrest of Lesiyampe follows an order by the DPP Nordin Haji over the regular purchase of maize at the National Cereals and Produce Board, something that we've also been keeping our eyes on here in the newsroom. According to the press statement by the DPP, the investigations revealed on October 2016, the Strategic Food and Reserve Board entered into an agency agreement with NCPB over the purchase of maize for a period of 2 years, and the CPP commenced purchasing of maize back in 2017-2018 season in October. Something that has also been on the forefront of this. Honorable Kipruto, your thoughts on this, having been the former Minister of Agriculture, this news that we're just receiving?
Well, it's very interesting because the PS does not himself make a decision.
Right.
It's the SGR team, which is a consultative process between the Office of the President, Treasury, and Minister of Agriculture. They make decisions on how maize should be purchased. And if there was any irregularity, it should actually be more than the PS. We must also get to know those who are working with National Cereals and Produce Board. Were they involved? And what is worrying me now as a farmer, not as a former minister, is the fact that up to now, there are 3 billion shillings yet to be paid to farmers.
Right.
And farmers, when they go, they are vetted again. This issue of vetting is getting obnoxious. They pretend that they want to see the farm where you planted the maize, even for as few as 200 bags. And after they have taken you through that vetting process, they tell you wait for money to be wired into your account.
Okay.
And there is evidence on the ground that at times they wire 2 million shillings to your account, but at the National Cereals and Produce Board, more than 2 million is seen to have been wired to your account.
Why is maize such a hot spot in Kenya?
For many reasons. Maize is a crop that is #1 food, followed by potatoes. And therefore it is something that is, maize scarcity is actually food insecurity in Kenya, and it can also preempt issues of national security. Number 2, all over the world, any government that plays with food security is a government that is bound to collapse. And all over the world, farmers are subsidized and they are protected, regardless of whether you are in America or in Europe. The farmers must be protected for purposes of sustainable food security. So when the president talks about food security, and yet they are messing with the maize subsector, because if the government also has now 3 billion shillings, and yet the other crop is ready to be purchased, and strategic grain reserve is yet to reach the threshold that we left with President Kibaki of 8 million bags, what are we talking about?
Right. And speaking of that, this is just coming from the press statement from DPP's office. These are the following people who are pressed for charges. Dr. Richard, of course, as we've said, the Principal Secretary under Agriculture and Livestock. Newton Terrell, the former Managing Director under the the National Cereal and Produce Board. Colonel Kiprotich, Renson Kibet, Joseph Kipruto, Cheboy, the County Director of Agriculture, to mention a few. Then these are the charges with the following offences: willful failure to comply with law relating to management of public property, abuse of office, neglect of official duty, unauthorized spending of public funds. And Honorable Kembi, we were just saying that we're going to keep continually talking about this issue of corruption day in, day out in Kenya. And look at the news that is just coming into the newsroom right now.
Well, first of all, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know what's going to happen, because, like I said, maybe we are going to have to hire one of the hotels in town to create a jailhouse, because you see, the numbers are coming out. There are too many.
Right.
The numbers of the people coming in on corruption issues, and we don't know what finally is going to happen. So I reckon we're just going to keep waiting and see what the DPP is going to do. I hope that he has the capacity, to prosecute all these people, because we do not want a situation where people are taken to court, then it takes forever for them for the case to be decided, until we forget about them, like people have forgotten about Aglo leasing. So I hope that the DPP has the capacity, coupled with the judiciary, so that this matters. Lesiyampe has been arrested, he's going to be charged. How long is this case going to take? Are the farmers going to be paid in the meantime the 3 billion shillings that Honorable Kipruto Rapkir was saying they are owed? These are the issues that the Kenyan now wants to see seriously. Yeah.
And upon the investigations, what I'm seeing right now, it was established that the NCPB spent 11.3 billion.
You can see.
Kenyan shillings, thereby exceeding 6 billion that the budget that they were given for. And here's the thing, Weda. The sad part is what Honorable Kembi has said. Yes. We're seeing the DPP working, a lot of arrests are being made. Nevertheless, the question on Kenyans' mind is, we've seen Kedero, we've seen the NYS2, we've seen now an entire DCJ being taken to court. Arrests are made, fine. But there's no prosecution, and there's no jail. No one has been sent to jail.
Yes.
Why?
I think it's a question of the quality of evidence. The enthusiasm for arresting people, that is easy. You can do it. You can decide this morning, arrest Kembi. And from here, I'm saying just as an example, arrest Kembi, and from here straight to court. But when you reach court, then you will be asked, the question he has asked, you have brought me here for what?
Right.
Then he says, give me these documents. That's when it dawns that there was no reason you should not have done it. That, coupled with the fact that you can see the question of the judicial budget, the judiciary budget, meaning the capacity of the court to handle these people. So looking at the whole of it, we hope that the DPP has sufficient evidence that would prove a crime beyond reasonable doubt. It's also becoming clear that working in public is now a risky business.
Right.
Because you work, there are people under you, like if you take Lesiyampe. I think when the NCPB people are spending money in wherever they are, they're based in Eldoret or whatever.
No, Nairobi.
At that level, the PS is not involved. But when it comes, neglect of duty, failing to do this, failing to do that. And then I also recall there was election. It was the time of election, and there was drought. And maize became a political issue. People were going hungry, and some people would have lost elections. So there was need to import maize very quickly, bring it and feed people before we turn to elections. All these things requires that sometimes you leave out some procedures. Now those procedures, when you look at them strictly according to law, you say it is said you have committed a criminal offense. So looking at, I see that working in public service is now very difficult.
All right, gentlemen, listen to this. Now, the investigations that were revealed on the 16th of October 2016, the Strategic Food Reserve Oversight Board entered into an agency agreement with NCPB then for the purchase of maize for a period of 2 years. The NCPB commenced purchasing of maize for the 2017-2018 season in October 2017. Nevertheless, upon investigations, it was established that NCPB spent about 11.3 billion Kenyan shillings, thereby exceeding the 6 billion Kenyan shillings budget for the The Strategic Food Reserve Oversight Board had budgeted to purchase 2 million bags of maize for financial year 2017-2018. And just to read the names, we have about 7 names. That's the names that we have from the statement by the DPP who are facing charges. Dr. Richard Lesiyampe, the PS for Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, State of Department, Newton Terrell, the former Managing Director of NCPB, Colonel Kip Rotich, the General Manager for Finance under the board, Caroline Kipchoge, the accounts clerk, Renson Kibet, NCPB Eldoret Silo Manager, Eric Kip Keter, the records officer for NCPB Eldoret Department, Joseph Kipruto Cheboy, the county director of agriculture, and the suspects are being charged on the following offences: willful failure to comply with the law with relating to management of public property, unauthorized spending of public funds, 11.3 billion Kenyan shillings, remember, conspiracy of defraud, abuse of office, and neglect of official duty. That is the news that we're receiving this morning, and of course we're keeping our eyes on that specific news. But gentlemen, just to wrap up our conversation this morning, a lot of the other question, especially with DCJ's arrest, that are people, Kenyans are asking, and Honorable Kimbe, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think her arrest was more political or criminal?
You see, I'm an adherent to the law myself, by virtue of my training as a lawyer. And it would be very unfortunate, for instance, if the DCJ Mwilu was arrested for political reasons. Because then what would it be worth? I want to believe that the DPP Haji has evidence. And this case, like all the other cases, and this is a matter we must insist as Kenyans. You see, the NYS2, for instance,
right,
we understand now that it's been adjourned to January of next year. It was first to October, then to January of next year. Now, January of next year, something else will come up. And we might even forget NYS2, we may be going to NYS3. And then it will be on and off ad infinitum. And this is very, very tiring to Kenyans. I would like to see a situation where the Honorable the Chief Justice, David Maraga, promulgates rules in the courts that a corruption case is going to be dealt with within a period, say 6 months maximum, or 3 months even, because it's a matter of evidence.
Exactly.
You should not take anybody to court unless and until you have sufficient evidence to nail them. That's the first principle. So you cannot then take people to court and then you are saying you are seeking time. And this is what I call capacity. That I want to believe and hope that the DPP has the capacity to do with all the prosecutions that is taken to court now, that the charges that is taken to court, so that the adjournment requests are not coming from the DPP,
right,
but from the defense, because we want to see justice and we want to see it immediately. DCJ Mwilu wants to know whether or not she can go back to her work, because it will be very difficult for her now to sit on the bench. I have been listening to all manner of legal arguments from panelists like this one, saying how this is going to happen, that's going to happen, etc., etc. But I know that whatever anybody says, it will be very difficult for her now to sit on that bench and make a decision on matters corruption.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Right.
So whether or not she's going to step aside is a completely different ballgame. The question is, will she have the moral authority to sit on that bench and make a decision against another Kenyan? That would be the question. We forget about all the legal arguments. So there are these issues, and the capacity of the DPP is very, very important. The judiciary is also very important. I want to hope that it is not incapacitated by this cut in budget, because it will make nonsense of all the efforts being made by DPP Haji and the DCI Kenoti and everybody else, if then these things drag on forever, that nobody knows that the fate that they are going to be in. That would be my answer to your question. Right.
Whether perhaps you can also help us Kenyans understand this, and I would let you have the closing comment. Yes. Is that what happened if Philomena Mwilu made the plea that she and her lawyers went to block?
Should be a suspect required to be released on bail, and then constitutionally she is not required to step aside. But morally and functionally, it would be difficult for her to continue sitting. So she would be, let's say, going to read newspapers in the office and doing what, but exercising her function, the moral questions, there will be a host of issues. So that is why when you block the plea, as at now, he is a suspect in the eyes of the police, but not a suspect before the court. So that would be the bigger position. And looking at the way she's going, the attempt is to block the charges. If you block the charges, she remains in office, working DCJ, but she will remain with that allegation hanging over her. Her enemies will always be yapping on that.